Jack Miller looked out the viewport as the transport ship descended toward the blue-green surface of Caldera. After 3 years of training and 6 months in cryo-sleep during transit, he was finally arriving at his new home. The planet's twin. Moons hung in the sky like watchful eyes, and Jack felt a flutter of nervousness in his stomach. "First posting jitters?" asked the pilot, a gruff woman named Kate who had been flying this route for over a decade. "Something like that," Jack replied. "Not every day a former marine biologist gets sent to be the lone human representative on an alien world." Kate laughed. "The Valdorians are good people. Well, not people exactly, but you know what I mean. Peaceful. Smart. You'll do fine." The ship landed with a gentle bump on the landing pad outside the main Valdorian city of Lumaris. Through the viewport, Jack could see a small, welcoming party waiting. The Valdorians stood tall on 4 slender legs, their bodies covered in short fur that shifted between deep blue and purple hues. Their long necks supported heads that reminded Jack of a cross between an otter and a deer, with large, expressive eyes and small, antler-like structures that glowed with bioluminescent patterns. "Here goes nothing," Jack said, grabbing his bag. Outside, the air smelled like cinnamon and sea salt. Jack took a deep breath and approached the waiting aliens. The lead Valdorian stepped forward and made a gentle bowing motion. "Welcome to Caldera, Jack Miller. I am Elder Nivi. We have prepared a dwelling for you near our research center." Jack returned the bow, remembering his cultural training. "Thank you for welcoming me to your world. I hope my work here will benefit both our peoples." The first few weeks were difficult. Despite his training, Jack struggled with the language beyond basic phrases. The food, while safe for human consumption, tasted strange, and nights were long and lonely as he adjusted to Caldera's 30-hour day cycle. But Jack was nothing if not adaptable. He had spent years studying ocean life on Earth before the discovery of alien life redirected his career. His patience and observation skills served him well. While other xenobiologists might have pushed for faster results, Jack took his time, watching the Valdorians in their daily lives and carefully documenting their habits and social structures. 3 months into his stay, Jack had earned a reputation among the Valdorians as respectful and thoughtful. They began to invite him to observe more private aspects of their culture. He learned that the bioluminescent patterns on their antlers weren't just for show. They were a form of communication, supplementing their spoken language with emotional context. One morning, as Jack was cataloging plant samples in the research center, Elder Nivi entered his lab area. "Jack Miller, I bring news that may interest your studies," she said, her antlers glowing with a pattern Jack had come to recognize as excited curiosity. "I'm always interested in learning more about Caldera and your people," Jack replied, setting aside his work. "The season of first nature approaches. It is a time when our cubs who have reached their 5th cycle are brought to the Valley of Whispers for their first exposure to wild Caldera." Jack tried to hide his excitement. He had read fragments about this ceremony in the limited human records, but had never expected to learn more about it firsthand. "It is a sacred tradition," Elder Nivi continued. "The cubs must feel the soil beneath their feet, taste the wild waters, and connect with the planet's energy. It strengthens their telepathic abilities and bonds them to Caldera itself." Jack nodded, fascinated. The Valdorians' mild telepathic abilities were still not fully understood by human scientists. "Our council has discussed your presence here," Elder Nivi said, her antlers now glowing with a solemn blue light. "We have decided to extend an invitation no off-worlder has received before. We would like you to observe the ceremony as part of your research." Jack was speechless for a moment. "Elder Nivi, this is an incredible honor. Are you certain the other elders agree?" "It was a unanimous decision. Your respect for our ways has not gone unnoticed. However, there are conditions. You must observe, from a designated distance, record nothing electronically, and share your observations only in scientific context." "I understand and accept these terms," Jack said, bowing deeply. In the following days, Jack prepared for the ceremony by studying everything he could about Valdorian cubs and their development. He learned that unlike human children, Valdorian cubs spent their first 4 years in specially protected nursery complexes. They're developing telepathic abilities, making them vulnerable to overstimulation. A week before the ceremony, Jack was introduced to several families whose cubs would participate. Among them was a researcher named Leary, who worked in the botanical division of the research center. "My youngest will experience first nature this cycle," Leary told him, her antlers glowing with maternal pride. "She is called Tala, and she has strong potential. The elders have great hopes for her abilities." Jack smiled. "I'm honored to be allowed to witness such an important milestone." "Your presence has changed things here," Leary said thoughtfully. "There were many who doubted humans could truly understand our ways. You have shown otherwise." The day before the ceremony, Jack was taken to see the Valley of Whispers from a distance. It was a breathtaking sight, a long, winding valley with crystal-clear streams running through it, surrounded by forests of tall, spiral-shaped trees with silver leaves. In the center of the valley stood an ancient stone formation that reminded Jack of Stonehenge back on Earth. "Tomorrow, 36 cubs will begin their journey into the valley," explained his guide, a Valdorian named Pax. "They will be accompanied by guardian adults, but the experience is meant to focus on the cubs' connection to nature." "Will they stay overnight?" Jack asked. 3 days and 3 nights, Pax replied. "The first day to connect with the land, the second with the water, and the third with the sky." As they turned to leave, Jack noticed something strange. A broken branch on one of the trees near the valley entrance. It seemed out of place in the carefully tended area. "Was someone here recently?" he asked, pointing to the damage. Pax looked, troubled. "Not that I know of. This area is restricted before ceremonies." Jack frowned, a strange feeling of unease washing over him. But he pushed it aside, focusing instead on the privilege he had been granted. Tomorrow he would witness a cultural event no human had ever seen. He would be a bridge between two worlds, helping to build understanding between humans and Valdorians. Little did Jack know that the broken branch was the first sign of a danger lurking nearby. A danger that would soon test his courage and change his life forever. The morning of the ceremony arrived with a gentle mist covering the Valley of Whispers. Jack woke early, his mind racing with anticipation. He dressed in the special garments the Valdorians had provided, a loose-fitting tunic and pants made from a soft, breathable material that blended with the natural surroundings. As Jack walked toward the meeting point, he noticed increased activity among the Valdorians. Several elders were gathered in a tight circle, their antlers glowing with patterns Jack recognized as concern. "Is everything all right?" Jack asked as he approached Elder Nivi. The elder turned to him, her large eyes showing worry. "There have been disturbances in the outer regions of our territory. 3 scouts failed to return from their patrols last night." Jack remembered the broken branch he had seen. "Could it be related to what I noticed yesterday?" "Perhaps. The council is discussing whether to proceed with the ceremony." Elder Nivi's antlers pulsed with indecision. "This ritual happens only once per cycle. To delay would affect the cub's development." Another elder spoke up. "We have doubled the guards around the valley. The ceremony will continue, but with extra caution." Jack nodded, but couldn't shake his feeling of unease. During his 3 months on Caldera, he had never seen the peaceful Valdorians so worried. An hour later, the procession began. 36 Valdorian cubs, each standing only waist-high to the adults, gathered at the entrance to the valley. Their small antlers glowed with excitement and nervousness. Parents and guardians stood nearby, sending reassuring telepathic messages that Jack could not perceive but could sense from the changing light patterns. Jack was introduced to his guide for the day, a Valdorian ranger named Moen. "You will observe from the eastern ridge," Moen explained. "It offers a clear view while keeping you separate from the ceremony." As they walked to the observation point, Jack spotted Leary with her cub, Tala. The young Valdorian's fur was a brighter blue than the adults, and her eyes seemed to take in everything with wonder. Leary mentioned Tala has strong potential, Jack said to Moen as they climbed the path to the ridge. Moen nodded. "She is special, even among our people. Her telepathic sensitivity is rare." Once at the observation point, Jack settled on a flat rock and watched the ceremony begin. The cubs formed a circle in the center of the valley. Elder Nevi led them in what appeared to be a chant, their small antlers glowing in synchronized patterns. "They are connecting to Caldera," Moen explained quietly, opening their minds to the planet's energy for the first time. The ceremony was beautiful. The cubs began to walk through the valley in a single line, stopping to touch trees, feel the soil, and dip their hands in the stream. With each new experience, their antlers would glow brighter, sharing their discoveries telepathically with the group. By midday, Jack was filled with a sense of privilege. No human had ever witnessed this before. His notes would contribute significantly to understanding Valdorian culture and development. Just after noon, they ate a simple meal of native fruits and what Jack had come to think of as Calderian honey bread. As Moen was explaining the significance of the food to the ceremony, his communication device chimed softly. Moen's antlers flashed with alarm as he listened to the message. "There has been another disappearance, a guard at the northern perimeter." Jack sat up straight. "Should we warn the others?" "The council has been informed." Moen stopped mid-sentence as his device chimed again. This time, his antlers glowed bright red, a color Jack had never seen before. "We must return to the group immediately," Moen said, his voice tight with fear. As they hurried down from the ridge, Jack asked, "What's happening?" "Draxians," Moen replied. "A hunting party has been detected entering our territory." Jack had heard stories about Draxians during his training but had hoped never to encounter them. They were a reptilian species known throughout the galaxy as ruthless predators. Unlike most spacefaring races who had evolved beyond violence, the Draxians glorified it, maintaining their hunter culture even as they developed advanced technology. "Why would they come here?" Jack asked, struggling to keep up with Moen's four-legged pace. "For the cubs," Moen replied grimly. "Developing telepathic brains fetch high prices in certain black markets." Jack felt sick. The galaxy had laws against such atrocities, but frontier worlds like Caldera were hard to protect. When they reached the valley floor, they found chaos. Adult Valdorians were gathering the cubs, trying to form an orderly evacuation. Jack spotted Leary frantically searching among the young ones. "Tala!" she called out, her antlers pulsing with distress. "She was by the stream with the water group." Jack looked toward the stream where several cubs were being hurried back by their guardians. Tala wasn't among them. "I'll help you find her," Jack said to Leary. Just then, a loud noise echoed across the valley, the sound of energy weapons. At the northern entrance, Jack could see tall, scaled figures moving with predatory grace. Their bodies were covered in natural armor plates, augmented with technological enhancements. Each carried weapons that made the Valdorian simple tools look primitive. "They're blocking the main exit," an elder shouted. "Everyone toward the southern path." In the confusion, Jack lost sight of Leary. He pushed against the flow of fleeing Valdorians, heading toward the stream where Tala had last been seen. He found 6 cubs huddled together behind a large rock, including Tala. A 7th cub was a short distance away, frozen in fear, staring at something in the trees. Jack followed. The cubs gazed and saw it. A Draxian scout at least 7 feet tall, its scaled skin a mottled green and brown for camouflage. It hadn't noticed the cubs yet, but it was moving in their direction. Without hesitation, Jack rushed to the lone cub, scooped it up, and retreated to the others. "Stay quiet," he whispered, even though he knew they could communicate telepathically. Tala's antlers glowed softly as she looked at Jack. Somehow he understood she was asking what to do. "We need to move away from the main fight," Jack said softly. "I know a place." During his previous visit to the valley, Jack had noticed a small cave system in the eastern ridge. It wasn't large, but it might hide the cubs until help arrived. "Follow me," he told them. "Stay low and quiet." As the sounds of conflict grew behind them, Jack led the 7 Valdorian cubs away from the ceremony site and toward what he hoped would be safety. What he didn't realize was that 3 more Draxian hunters had circled around and were now between them and his planned escape route. Jack moved carefully through the tall, silver-leaved plants with the 7 Valdorian cubs close behind him. He could hear distant sounds of conflict from the main ceremony area. The cubs' antlers glowed with fear, casting a soft blue light around them. "Try to dim your lights," Jack whispered to them. "The Draxians might see us." Tala, who seemed to understand him best, made a soft chirping sound. The cubs' antlers gradually dimmed until they barely glowed at all. Jack led them toward the eastern ridge where he had spotted the cave system. They moved slowly, stopping whenever a sound caught Jack's attention. The cubs were remarkably quiet, sensing the danger through their developing telepathic abilities. They had covered about half the distance when Jack froze. Ahead, between 2 large rocks, he caught a glimpse of scaled skin reflecting sunlight. A Draxian was blocking their path. Jack signaled the cubs to stay put and crouched behind a bush. He watched the hunter move with predatory grace, its head swiveling as it scanned the area. The Draxian was even more intimidating up close. Nearly 7 feet tall with powerful limbs and natural armor plates covering its body. A collection of high-tech equipment hung from its belt, and it carried what looked like an energy rifle. Jack evaluated their options. Going back wasn't safe. The main path was blocked. They needed to find another way to the caves. He turned to the cubs and pointed to a dense patch of the silver-leaved plants off to their right. The vegetation might provide cover for a detour. The cubs seemed to understand, following Jack's lead as they crawled through the undergrowth. The detour added time to their journey, but they managed to avoid the Draxian hunter. After 20 tense minutes, they reached the foot of the eastern ridge. The cave opening was just visible about 30 feet up the rocky slope. "We need to climb," Jack whispered, pointing to the cave. The cubs looked at the steep slope with uncertainty. Their 4 legs were designed for running across flat terrain, not climbing rocks. "I'll help you," Jack assured them. He picked up the smallest cub first and carefully made his way up the slope, setting the young Valdorian down inside the cave entrance. One by one he carried each cub up to safety, with Tala being the last. Just as Jack was helping Tala into the cave, a movement caught his eye. Down below, 2 Draxian hunters had emerged from the trees and were scanning the area. Jack quickly pulled Tala deeper into the cave and motioned for all the cubs to move further back. The cave system was smaller than Jack had hoped. A main chamber about 15 feet across led to 2 smaller alcoves. It wasn't much, but at least they were hidden from immediate sight. "We'll be safe here for now," Jack said softly, trying to sound confident for the cubs' sake. One of the cubs made a sad chirping sound. Jack noticed they were all looking at something behind him. He turned and saw what had upset them. A communication device similar to the one Moen had carried lay broken on the cave floor. Jack picked it up, hoping it might still work, but the screen was shattered. They had no way to call for help. Outside, Jack could hear the Draxians moving closer. They were methodically searching the area, and it wouldn't be long before they checked the cave. Jack gathered the cubs in the furthest alcove. "Stay here and stay quiet," he instructed. He moved back to the main chamber and quickly assessed what he had to work with. His equipment was minimal: a small knife, a light source, a water container, and the basic field kit he had brought to take notes during the ceremony. Jack's mind raced as he formed a plan. He remembered his training about Draxian physiology. Despite their fearsome reputation, they had weaknesses. Their eyes were sensitive to bright light, and their enhanced sense of smell could be overwhelmed by strong scents. In his field kit, Jack had several chemical markers he used to tag plant samples. One of them gave off a pungent smell that even he found overwhelming. He took it out along with his light source. Jack positioned himself near the cave entrance but out of direct sight. He could hear the Draxians getting closer, their voices low and guttural as they communicated with each other. "Life signs in this direction," one of them said in the common galactic language. "Could be the telepathic young ones." "The market value on developing Valdorian brains will make us rich," the other replied. "Especially if we find the special one the scanner detected." Jack realized with horror that they must be talking about Tala, whose strong telepathic abilities likely made her a prime target. The sound of clawed feet on rock told Jack the hunters were starting to climb toward the cave. He readied his makeshift tools, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never been in combat, but his instinct to protect the cubs overrode his fear. The first Draxian appeared at the cave entrance, its scaled head swiveling as its eyes adjusted to the dim light. Before it could spot the cubs, Jack activated his light source at maximum brightness and aimed it directly at the hunter's sensitive eyes. The Draxian shrieked and recoiled, temporarily blinded. In the same motion, Jack threw the chemical marker at the cave entrance. It broke open, releasing a cloud of pungent chemicals. The second Draxian, climbing just behind the first, was caught in the chemical cloud. It coughed and sputtered, its enhanced sense of smell overwhelmed by the powerful scent. Jack knew he had only bought them seconds. The Draxians would recover quickly and would now be angry. He rushed back to the cubs. "We need to move deeper into the cave," he said urgently. At the back of the alcove, Jack noticed a narrow crack that might lead further into the cave system. It would be tight for him, but perfect for the smaller cubs. "Through here," he directed them. "Quickly." The cubs squeezed through the crack one by one. Jack could hear the Draxians recovering behind him, their angry voices echoing in the cave. "I'll kill the interfering creature myself," one snarled. Jack urged the last cub through and then tried to follow. The opening was narrower than he had estimated. He got his shoulders through but then became stuck. Behind him, heavy footsteps signaled the Draxians had entered the main chamber. Jack pushed harder, ignoring the pain as the rock scraped against his skin. With a final desperate effort, he squeezed through just as a clawed hand swiped at the space where he had been. The passage opened into another chamber, smaller than the first but with a ceiling high enough for Jack to stand. Light filtered in from a small opening above, illuminating the 7 frightened cubs huddled together. Jack checked their new sanctuary. There was no other exit. They were trapped, but at least the narrow passage would prevent the adult Draxians from following easily. "I won't let them hurt you," Jack promised the cubs, even as he wondered how he could possibly keep that promise against such deadly hunters. Outside the narrow passage, Jack could hear the Draxians working to widen the opening. Their claws scraped against stone as they chipped away at the rock. It wouldn't take them long to break through. "We need to prepare," Jack told the cubs, who watched him with wide, frightened eyes. Jack examined the small chamber more carefully. The floor was covered with loose stones and dirt. The walls were rough, with small ledges and cracks. Light came from a hole in the ceiling about 20 feet up, too small and too high for escape, but it provided natural illumination. An idea formed in Jack's mind. He might not be able to outfight the Draxians, but perhaps he could outsmart them. "Help me gather stones," he said to the cubs, picking up rocks from the floor. "Like this." The cubs seemed to understand. They began collecting stones with their small hands, bringing them to Jack. He positioned the largest rocks near the narrow entrance, creating a pile that could be easily pushed over. Next, Jack took off his tunic and tore it into strips. During his months studying Caldera's plant life, he had discovered a type of sap that became extremely sticky when exposed to air. Some of the plants grew right outside the cave, and Jack had collected samples in small vials as part of his research. He opened a vial and carefully spread the sticky sap on the strips of fabric. Then he placed these sticky traps on the ground near the entrance and covered them lightly with dirt. As Jack worked, Tala approached him. Her antlers glowed with a pattern he hadn't seen before. She reached out and touched his hand. Suddenly, Jack felt a strange sensation, like someone whispering directly into his mind. "The others are coming," the thought formed in his head. But not soon enough. Jack stared at Tala in amazement. She had established a telepathic link with him. "Can you communicate with the other Valdorians?" he asked aloud. Tala's antlers pulsed. "Mother hears me," came the thought, "but they are fighting many hunters." This was both good and bad news. Help was on the way, but they needed to survive until it arrived. Outside, the scraping sounds grew louder. The Draxians were close to breaking through. Jack positioned the cubs behind a small rock formation on the far side of the chamber. "Stay hidden," he told them. "No matter what happens, don't come out until other Valdorians arrive." The cubs huddled together, their antlers dimmed to almost nothing. Tala was the last to join them. Before she did, she touched Jack's hand again. Be careful, the thought came to him. They are very angry. Jack nodded and took position behind his pile of rocks. He didn't have long to wait. With a final crash, the narrow passage widened enough for a Draxian to squeeze through. The first hunter pushed its head and shoulders into the chamber. Its reptilian eyes blinked in the light from the ceiling hole. Jack remained perfectly still, pressed against the wall near the entrance. The Draxian pulled itself fully into the chamber, its scaled body scraping against the rock. It didn't see Jack in the shadows. Instead, its attention was drawn to the small rock formation where the cubs were hidden. I smell them, it hissed, moving forward, and directly onto one of Jack's sticky traps. The hunter let out a surprised snarl as its foot became stuck to the ground. It yanked at its leg, but the plant sap held firm. While it was distracted, Jack pushed the pile of rocks he had prepared. Stones cascaded down onto the Draxian, causing it to lose balance. With one foot stuck and now off balance, the hunter fell heavily to the ground. Jack didn't hesitate. He leaped onto the fallen Draxian's back and pressed his small knife against a gap in the natural armor plates at the base of its neck, one of the few vulnerable spots he remembered from his xenobiology training. Don't move, Jack commanded. The Draxian froze, recognizing its vulnerable position. Human, it hissed in surprise. What are you doing on this world? Protecting those who need protection, Jack answered, pressing the knife slightly harder. A sound from the passage alerted Jack that the second hunter was about to enter. He needed to act fast. Call to your friend, Jack ordered the pinned Draxian. Tell him you found the cubs and to come quickly. The Draxian hesitated, then called out in its guttural language. Jack didn't understand the words, but the message was clear from the excited tone. The second Draxian hurried to squeeze through the opening. As soon as its head and shoulders cleared the passage, Jack threw his light directly at its sensitive eyes, temporarily blinding it. In the same motion, Jack grabbed the first Draxian's energy weapon and fired at the ceiling above the entrance. Rocks rained down, partially blocking the passage again and trapping the second Draxian halfway through. Now Jack had one hunter pinned beneath him and another trapped in the passage. But he knew the situation was still dangerous. There could be more Draxians outside, and those he had trapped would eventually free themselves. The first Draxian twisted suddenly, throwing Jack off its back. The sticky trap still held one of its feet, but it lashed out with clawed hands. Jack rolled away, narrowly avoiding the sharp claws. He fired the energy weapon again, but the shot went wide, hitting the wall. The Draxian lunged at Jack, its mouth open to reveal rows of sharp teeth. Jack dodged, but not fast enough. Claws raked across his arm, drawing blood. Jack cried out in pain, but kept moving. He circled the chamber, staying just out of the hunter's reach. The Draxian, still partly stuck to the floor, could only pivot in place. The second hunter, meanwhile, was working to free itself from the partially collapsed passage. Rock shifted as it pushed and pulled. Jack needed a new plan. His gaze fell on a large, loose rock near the ceiling, just above where the first Draxian stood. If he could hit it just right, he aimed the energy weapon and fired. The shot struck, true, dislodging the rock. It fell directly onto the Draxian's head with a sickening crunch. The hunter crumpled to the ground. Jack had no time to feel relief. The second Draxian had freed itself and now squeezed fully into the chamber, its eyes blazing with anger. You will die slowly for that, human, it snarled. The Draxian was bigger and stronger than Jack, and it was uninjured. It circled the chamber, forcing Jack to back away. Jack still held the energy weapon, but the light on its side was blinking red, nearly out of power. Jack fired anyway. The beam struck the Draxian but was too weak to penetrate its armor. The weapon sputtered and died. Theo, Hunter laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. No more tricks, human. It sprang forward with surprising speed. Jack couldn't dodge in time. The Draxian slammed into him, sending him crashing against the wall. The impact knocked the breath from his lungs. Before Jack could recover, the hunter grabbed him by the throat and lifted him off the ground. Jack struggled, kicking and punching, but the Draxian's armor deflected his blows. "The cubs will watch you die," the hunter growled. "Then they will be next." As his vision began to darken from lack of oxygen, Jack heard a soft sound behind the Draxian. Tala had emerged from hiding. Her antlers glowed bright red and her eyes were fixed on the hunter's back. The Draxian suddenly stiffened and let out a howl of pain. It released Jack and clutched at its head. "Get out!" it screamed. "Get out of my mind!" Tala had somehow launched a telepathic attack. The hunter stumbled backward, still clutching its head. Jack didn't waste the opportunity. He grabbed a sharp rock from the floor and struck with all his remaining strength at the vulnerable spot at the base of the Draxian's neck. The hunter collapsed, its injured mind and body unable to withstand the combined attack. Jack slumped against the wall, exhausted and bleeding from several wounds. The two Draxian hunters lay motionless on the cave floor. Jack wasn't sure if they were dead or just unconscious, but they weren't a threat for now. Tala approached him cautiously, her antlers still glowing brightly. The other cubs emerged from their hiding place and gathered around. One of them touched Jack's injured arm gently. "Thank you," came the thought in Jack's mind. It wasn't just Tala this time. Somehow all 7 cubs had established a telepathic connection with him. "Are you all okay?" Jack asked aloud. 7 small heads nodded in unison. Despite everything, Jack smiled. They had survived the immediate danger, but he wasn't sure how many more Draxians might be outside. "We need to stay here until help comes," he told them. "Can any of you reach the adult Valdorians?" Tala's antlers pulsed. "Yes," came the thought. "They are fighting, but they know where we are now. Mother is coming." Jack nodded, relieved. He tore a strip from what remained of his clothing and wrapped it around his worst wound, a deep cut on his arm. The cubs moved closer to Jack, their small bodies pressed against him. He realized they were trying to keep him warm as shock set in. Their fur emitted a gentle heat that was surprisingly comforting. "You were very brave," Jack told Tala. "That was amazing what you did." "I was scared," her thought replied. "But you were not afraid to fight for us, so I could not be afraid either." Time passed slowly in the small chamber. Jack drifted in and out of consciousness. Each time he awoke, the cubs were still there, watching over him. Once, he thought he heard more scratching at the passage entrance, but it might have been a dream. Then suddenly, the chamber was filled with light. Jack blinked, trying to focus. The opening in the ceiling had been widened and faces looked down at them from above. Valdorian faces. "They're here," a voice called out. "The cubs are safe, and the human is with them." What happened next was a blur to Jack. Ropes descended from above. Valdorian rangers climbed down into the chamber. The cubs were lifted to safety one by one. Medical personnel examined Jack's wounds and gave him something that dulled the pain. "You will be okay," a medic assured him. "But we need to get you to a healing center." Jack was carefully secured in a harness and lifted out of the cave. The bright daylight made him squint after so many hours in the dim chamber. As his eyes adjusted, he saw that the sun was setting. The entire ordeal had lasted nearly a full day. A crowd of Valdorians had gathered outside the cave. Parents rushed forward to reclaim their cubs. Jack saw Leary embracing Tala, both their antlers glowing with joy and relief. Elder Nivi approached as the medics prepared to transport Jack. "Jack Miller," she said formally, "the Valdorian people owe you a debt that cannot be repaid." "I just did what anyone would do," Jack replied weakly. "No," Elder Nivi said firmly. "What you did was extraordinary. The Draxian hunting party had 15 members, while most of our forces were engaged with the main group. You protected our most vulnerable young ones against 2 hunters with nothing but your courage and cleverness." Jack tried to sit up despite his injuries. "The other Draxians, are they gone?" "Most were captured or driven off," the elder explained. 2 escaped in their ship, but the Galactic Council has been notified. The Draxians will find no safe harbor in this sector again." Jack relaxed slightly. "Good," he said. Then a thought struck him. "The cubs, they communicated with me telepathically. Is that normal?" Elder Nivi's antlers glowed with surprise. No, it is not. Even among our own kind, telepathic communication with non-Valdorians is extremely rare and takes years of training. For cubs to achieve this, she paused. It speaks to both their potential and the bond they formed with you in danger. The medics indicated it was time to move Jack to the medical transport. As they carried him away, the Valdorian parents and cubs lined the path. Each cub's antlers glowed in the same pattern, a tribute that Jack didn't understand but felt honored by nonetheless. 3 days later, Jack woke in a healing center in Lumaris. His wounds had been treated with advanced Valdorian medicine and were healing rapidly. His room was filled with what appeared to be gifts, strange plants, handcrafted items, and small glowing crystals. Leary entered, carrying a tray of food. "The hero awakes," she said with a gesture that Jack had come to recognize as a Valdorian smile. "Not a hero," Jack protested, "just in the right place at the right time." "The 7 cubs you saved would disagree," Leary replied, "as would their parents and indeed all Valdorians." She set the tray down and sat beside his bed. "The council has met. They wish to honor you with our highest recognition. And there is more news. The Galactic Council representative has arrived. The evidence of Draxian hunters targeting telepathic young ones has finally forced them to act. New protections will be established for all developing telepathic species." Jack nodded, satisfied that some good would come from the ordeal. "And Tala, how is she?" "Changed," Leary said, her antlers glowing softly. "All 7 cubs are. They shared a mind bond with a human in a moment of extreme danger. Such a thing has never happened before." A week later, Jack was strong enough to attend the ceremony the Valdorians had planned. It was held in the Valley of Whispers, now cleansed of the violence that had occurred there. The entire Valdorian population seemed to have gathered. At the center of the valley near the ancient stone formation, Elder Nevi stood with the 7 cubs Jack had protected. Tala stepped forward, carrying something wrapped in shimmering fabric. "Jack Miller," Elder Nevi announced, "for your courage, in defending our young ones and for creating a bond that transcends species, we name you Valdatrin, Guardian of the Future." Tala presented Jack with the wrapped object. When he unfolded the fabric, he found a small stone carving of a human figure standing protectively over 7 Valdorian cubs. The detail was incredible. "This is only the beginning," Elder Nevi continued. "A larger version will be carved into the sacred stone of this valley, so that all future generations will know what occurred here." Jack was speechless. He looked at the 7 cubs, their antlers glowing with pride and affection. Tala's thought touched his mind. "You will always be part of us now." Word of what happened on Caldera spread quickly through the galaxy. The story changed with each telling, growing more fantastic. How a single human had fought off dozens of Draxian hunters barehanded, how he had established telepathic communication with an alien species, how he had changed the course of galactic politics. Jack didn't mind the exaggerations. He continued his work on Caldera, but with a new focus, serving as a bridge between humans and Valdorians. The 7 cubs he had saved became his special project. They maintained their unique telepathic connection to him, and together they worked to develop this unexpected bond between their species. 5 years later, when a human Valdorian protection team was formed to safeguard vulnerable species throughout the galaxy, Jack was the natural choice to lead it. And at his side were 7 young Valdorians, now approaching adulthood, who had once huddled in a cave with a human who refused to let them face danger alone. The legend continued to grow. But for Jack, the greatest reward was the family he had, found among the stars, and knowing that somewhere in the Valley of Whispers, his likeness stood eternal in stone. The human who had defended alien cubs from galactic predators with nothing but courage and determination.